George, welcome to Below the Belt podcast. How you doing, mate?
Very well, massive thank you for having me on.
No problem at all. Do you know what? Let's jump straight into it before we even talk about yourself. And we've spoke a little bit about this off camera, right? Tell me, what is the main problem with personal trainers today?
So majority of personal trainers, from my experience and from what I've seen over the years, is that there's a poor standard of education. Now, personal training qualification, it's a level 3 qualification. It's technically the same standard as a BTEC. And I've got nothing wrong with BTECs, but for me personally, if you're going to be helping someone to change their life, if you're going to help them make complete changes to their health, I personally, if I was going to be working with someone, would definitely like to work with someone who is qualified to a higher standard than a BTEC. And because of that poor standard, and it's a professional standard that is set, and as I said, it's majority of personal trainers, it's not all, because some go, they do the extra work, they get that high level of an understanding, but ultimately the majority don't. They think, I'm in relatively good shape, people keep telling me, go and work in the fitness and health industry, so I go and get a PT qualification, and then they just go and do what they've either been told is good or what is the kind of trend at the time and they see on social media. And that for me is where the fundamental problem comes. When you have a higher level understanding of how health and wellness really works, you understand that an evidence-based approach, which is incorporating 3 key things, it's incorporating science, specific data from the person, and also expert knowledge, higher than a BTEC standard of expert knowledge.
Yeah.
And it's incorporating those 3 things to find the truth somewhere in the middle to give someone what they actually need.
It is always a middle ground, right, of
100%.
all those different things that you just mentioned.
100%. And too many people treat fitness and wellness as a one-dimensional thing. It's like, solve your many health and fitness problems with this diet.
One solution.
1 hour out of 168 hours a week of a personal training session. And I'm going to just beast you in that session.
But is there a reason to that as to why people offer that one golden solution? Because that's what a lot of clients think it takes, just that one solution. Where is it? Can I find that one solution that's going to get me into that holiday shape or get me to lose X amount of weight? Do you think that's what it is as well, that the clients kind of think that there is that one kind of golden solution?
I think it's twofold. So for some people, I genuinely think it's a lack of knowledge. I think they hear things, they see things on social media and think, right, let's crack on, let's try that.
Yeah.
I think the other side of it is marketing. It's very easy to sell one solution. It's a lot harder to sell. You need multiple things in different areas. It doesn't have to be extremely complex. It can be simple, but it's going to take multiple things in different areas to get to you to where you actually want to be long term.
Obviously, you mentioned the level 3 PT qualification. What do you think is wrong with that at the moment, and why do you think it's potentially outdated and not going to quite fulfill the needs of somebody who wants to excel in the personal coaching world?
I think it's because it's based on a minimum standard instead of wanting to excel that standard and actually really make an impact across the health and wellness industry. So because it's set to a minimum standard, it's what does somebody need to know at the lowest level. And having gone to university myself, which I'm going to come on to go into a bit more detail with, I remember studying the PT qualification whilst I was at uni and thinking, why are we only learning this? Like, when there's so much more to understand and there's so much more to apply. And then when I would listen to personal trainers talk, I think, wow, your lack of understanding, it's not your fault because you don't know what you don't know. But it definitely is your responsibility to go and excel that
Educate
learning.
yourself.
100%. And I was kind of always sat there thinking, well, why do you just leave it there? And then you see the results for clients, and a lot of clients either getting beasted, as I said, it's like a culture around that, like you have to crawl out of my sessions. And honestly, every time I hear that, it just makes me cringe, because I just think you're not actually giving someone what they need. You're trying to make yourself feel great as the guy who beasts people and makes you crawl out. It's just, it's not actually going to contribute. Don't get me wrong, there's a time and place for that.
Yeah.
If it's needed, but if you actually do a proper needs analysis of what majority of people need, who've got already very stressful, busy lives, they definitely don't need to just be beasted in classes and sessions.
Do you think it's more of a, with the level 3 qualification, it's more of a tick box activity then? And is it something that aspiring personal trainers and coaches, they should do, and then add to that skill set, or can they completely just avoid the level 3 qualification and learn their trade elsewhere? What would your advice be?
It's a great question. If you want to work on the gym floor, you have to be a level 3 personal trainer.
Okay.
I'd advise people to frame it differently. I'd advise you to see that as the entry level,
Yeah.
and that's kind of level 1, and you're going to go on and excel your learning far past that. Whether university, that's a completely different topic. But I think there's so many different ways you can educate yourself now to excel to that level, and then you'll get the practical experience of actually working with people. So for insurance purposes, yes, you need it, but then in terms of how you see it, it should just be, this is the first thing I need to do to get in the door. Once I'm in the door, I then need to really think about how am I going to excel my areas of weakness.
Okay, no, that makes sense. And then when you did the level 3 qualification, just out of curiosity, because I've always wanted to know, I've seen so many personal trainers who are like, yeah, I'm level 3 qualified, etc. What does the course actually entail? What does it involve? Like you said, it's a minimum standard, right? So what type did you learn anything, or is it stuff you already knew? Because obviously you were at university at the same time, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was the same standard as I did at college. So I literally had no formal teaching for it and just ticked it off on evenings and weekends when I could along. And that was alongside a degree, which kind of gives you the answer to how much time and effort it required. There's some personal training qualifications that you can do in just a couple of weeks online, to give you context. If in that marketplace it is a race to how quick and how cheap can you become a PT?
Yeah.
Because once you pay $1,000 to go and do that, you can then start charging £20 upwards an hour, which is what I have the big problem with. It's like, it's an easy way for some people to make money, but at the end of that is, and I really want to chat about this, definitely about the obesity epidemic that we're in, and the issues that generally the kind of modern way of living has health implications on, and it's almost like, that is that really the best solution? Is that really our best kind of person to go to?
Yeah, okay, no, that's interesting. So obviously we've spoke about some of the problems with personal trainers today. So would you consider yourself to be a personal trainer or kind of a health and fitness coach? And what type of coach are you?
Definitely wouldn't call myself a personal trainer, because it almost puts me into that same bracket. I class myself as a health and wellness coach, because it's a more of a holistic approach to health and fitness, just because of my varied background. And I always laugh when people call me personal trainer. My clients know definitely not to call me a personal trainer.
So for people watching, what is your background then? Because obviously I know you went to university, did a master's. Was it strength and conditioning?
Yeah. So I cut a long story short, because I always find people kind of lose it when I go through. But in the short of it, I've only ever been in health and wellness.
Yeah.
I became relatively obsessed with this idea of optimal human health years and years ago, when I was probably around 12, 13 years old, because that's when I started amateur boxing. So my interests of it all came from there, boxing myself. How could I become the peak version of a human to compete in my sport?
Okay.
As time went on, I started finding it more fulfilling helping other people than dodging punches, essentially, to round it up. But over that time, I was always boxing as an amateur boxer. And then simultaneous to that, I was like, well, I need to study something. I need to get a job. I need to fund this in some way. So I then went to work in a gym. So my college experience was half the day we boxed, half the day we learned sport and exercise. It was called the ACE program at the time. It's now the DICE. From there, I then went on to university. I got a sports scholarship to go to uni. So I was a funded athlete whilst learning sports and exercise science, again, a sports and exercise science degree. And then I went on to do my master's after that in strength and conditioning, which is optimal performance for athletes.
Okay.
So throughout that time, I pretty much covered all bases of exercise psychology, exercise health, nutrition, athletic performance, weightlifting, the whole lot really, and went into a lot of detail around it. Simultaneous to all that, I was also working in a gym. So my way of earning money whilst I was at uni was delivering classes and being a personal, I would class then as a personal trainer, just not now. And that kind of transferred all the way over the years. I finished my master's, and we were chatting about this before we started the podcast, but I came to a point with my boxing where it was a decision I had to make. You're either all in or you're all out. Boxing isn't a sport you can really play as such. You have to be all in. Yeah, and you know this as well. Like you have to be all in. So it was my choice then. Well, could I give up everything else I'm doing and just box, or is boxing easy to give up? And it was easy to give up.
Were you attached to the boxing? Because it is a sport that hooks you, right? It's a sport that's hard to leave sometimes.
Massive identity around boxing. Everybody knew me for boxing, which is why I then went and coached amateur and professional boxing after, because I couldn't let go of that. And that's something that I now know in hindsight. At the time, it just seemed the most logical thing to do. Now in hindsight, I'm like, no, it was just a bit of an identity issue that I couldn't let go of it.
I could tell you're a good boxer just from the way. Obviously, you've posted the odd clip here and there. Sometimes it's just you hitting the bags and stuff. But I could tell with your movement, the way that you strike and the way that you throw punches, that you were very proficient, right? So to what level did you take it with the amateur boxing? And did you have many bouts in the end?
So I think it was 32 bouts in the end.
Do you know what? That's absolutely crazy. I finished on exactly 32 as well.
Really?
Yeah.
So yes, it was around 32. I got to a decent level. It was always like regional area, pushing on to the nationals. I was never that top elite fighter that it just came.
And again, that's the exact same level I finished on, just trying to get into that national final and win it kind of bit. But it's a tough sport, right?
100%. And when people keep telling you you're far better at the education side of things than the boxing side of things, it's like after a little while you start to listen. And I love my time boxing. I've got the opportunity to spar some incredible fighters over the years. It taught me a lot in terms of characteristics and skills that I now have.
You said you sparred a previous guest of mine, right, Huey?
Yeah, years and years ago. He used to mainly come to spar Macaulay Owen. Yeah. And then, I always used to jump in just after because, is a phenomenal fighter.
I feel like someone like that would be my worst nightmare in sparring. Someone who just doesn't leave you alone, right?
He was mine, honestly, terrific fight. And that was the thing. He was 16. And that was a big thing that I've realised over the years, and I'll come on to even some of the stuff I did after my master's degree. But if you want to be exceptional, you have to just focus on one thing. If you start
can't have a plan B, right?
Yeah, and it was one of the best things that I got told by a mentor, a business mentor, because so for even more context, after I finished my master's degree, I went to personal train in the jewellery quarter, so in Birmingham, just after COVID. So it was a great idea to go self-employed. After that, I then set up a separate business with my brother called Fitness by Science, which was a personal training education company, where our whole mission was to qualify people to a higher standard than the PT qual. And alongside that, I was doing...
Do you still do that?
Yeah, so that I'll come on to that. I finished literally April this year.
Okay.
And just during that, I was also personal training on the gym floor. I was doing classes. I was a boxing coach, amateur and professional. And I was also building my online coaching program that I now only do, which is the Optimal Achiever. So I was doing all these different things, thinking that if you do loads of things, you can't fail, can you?
Yeah.
Balancing loads of stuff, something's going to work.
Spread yourself too thin in a way, right?
100%. And it came to a point where I was chatting to a business mentor, very well known in the fitness space. And I literally asked him, my question was framed, and this was a few years after my master's. I've been doing this. I was working ridiculous hours. And my question was framed, how do I balance everything and get the most out of it? And he literally looked at me, and it was one of those head roll off moment kind of epiphany moments. And he literally went, you just need to fucking pick if you want to actually be good at anything.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right. Not quite what I wanted. Went away and actually had to think about it. And I was like, yeah, you're right. It's everything I'd seen up to that point, working with athletes, looking at people who are successful in business. They just go all in on one thing. And that was a big realization. So everything went that didn't align with my actual mission and my actual goal in life. And that meant Fitness by Science, the personal training and education company, went because what in that space, it was more of a race to the bottom in terms of the marketplace. People wanted cheap and quick.
Yeah.
So we couldn't maintain the standard we wanted to. And I thought it was a better idea to move into just my coaching program. Because if I build my coaching program up, I can control the entire ecosystem. I can bring the personal trainers in. Yeah. Or the coaches in to work for me, and I can train them eventually. And this is kind of my next phase of development. I can train them exactly how I coach, and we can expand from there, as opposed to me just giving a qual and not actually having any control over the end result somebody produces. And so my whole mission is to optimize human health. That's like to contribute to optimizing human health, and doing that by raising the standards in coaching.
Okay, interesting. And obviously, just going back to the boxing, which you touched on, so obviously you did it for a number of years, right, and to a very good standard. What did you learn while you box for those number of years? Obviously, I'm interested because obviously there's a few things that I feel like I took away that I can apply to everyday life now. But do you think it gave you a greater sense with regards to thinking about your mindset and how to apply yourself? And yeah, what do you think you learned?
Definitely mindset wise, I think it really brings you close to reality
Mm,
with boxing, any combat sport, because you get out what you put in
mm,
and you start to really see the results of your efforts,
mm,
and it really gives you that sense of control because you know you have to take control of your nutrition, your running,
mm,
your strength and conditioning outside
mm,
of it. When you're in the ring, you need to control your ability to not be reactive. You have to have that sense of calm, even
mm,
though it's an extremely difficult environment to be
mm,
in. And those kind of transferable skills is
mm,
what part of the reason why I think business appeals to me so
mm,
much, because you're not getting punched in the face, but it's
mm.
very similar. You're having to control yourself in what
Yeah,
is a very dynamic and can be reactive
yeah,
environment.
yeah.
And I think, yeah, and the discipline side of things naturally comes from that, because if you start to see that what you put in, you get out.
Mm,
Action is what leads to result. It doesn't always
mm,
come straight away,
mm,
but if you start taking complete control of that, it just becomes easy to become disciplined. And all discipline, I always speak to my
mm.
clients about this. All discipline is just doing exactly what you said you were going to do. So
Yeah.
if you set in the calendar, do you do it, yes or no? And then you can make discipline easier by
Mm,
how you stack things in your favor and stack
mm,
things also
mm.
against you not doing it as well.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's a good point you just raised about following through with what you said you were gonna do, right? But being a man or woman of your word, so to speak, and as easy as that sounds, one that's a huge part of discipline, but I think it's something that a lot of people don't realize that they struggle with, right? Like whether it be you're gonna wake up at a certain time in the morning and you end up snoozing your alarm 3 or 4 times, or you end up just lying in a little bit longer, or you say you're gonna be conscious of your kind of calorie intake or your food intake, and then you don't follow through with it. Slowly, you begin to lose trust in yourself, right? And that's where the discipline starts to slowly go out the window.
100%. And I think that's where a lot of anxiety comes from,
Mm,
because if you can't trust that you're going to follow through on something, if you
mm,
can't trust that you have the ability to do something and the probability of something occurring that you want to happen
mm.
is low, well, you're
Yeah,
naturally going to have anxiety around it.
yeah,
And
yeah.
you can almost stack that evidence of, well, how many things am I consistently doing and following through on?
Mm,
Because if you're confident on your ability,
yeah,
you're going to be confident, and it massively reduces anxiety because you know
yeah,
you can do something.
definitely. Confident in your own abilities, right? Let's talk about some of the clients that you've had and your ideal clients. So,
hmm
yeah, what would you say your ideal type of client would be?
Yeah, so now things have really moved on. I've completely stopped everything else that I was doing.
Are
The
you all
gym
online
floor
now? Sorry, did you say?
completely online
Yeah.
now, so I don't do anything else bar my online
Do
coaching
you miss the
program.
face-to-face interaction?
No, so
Nah,
I've
not enough of people.
no. It's funny you say that. I still meet up with like my
Yeah,
clients, and we
yeah,
still have a face to face element of it.
yeah,
But in terms of the face to face PT, the reason I
yeah.
don't miss that is because and a lot
It's
of personal
physically
training
like tiring, isn't it?
tiring, but then at the same time, you end up counting reps and chatting a lot of the time.
Mm,
And I'm very results driven. I'm very
yeah,
outcome driven. I love building great relationships because
yeah,
that is the first thing that I do before I'll bring anybody on
mm,
board now. And that's what I'm in a great
mm,
position to say that I can do. I don't work with anybody I don't first like.
yeah, yeah,
But whereas when you're personal training, it tends to be more of a chat and you count reps.
yeah.
And that's what I saw a lot in the gym, because you have an hour and then you watch PTs, they kind of fill it with
Mm,
things, and it's not
bit of a chit chat.
necessarily even the best thing for that person. It's just what they find are most comfortable doing, because they don't have that wide knowledge of actually what that person needs.
How do you solve the problem then? For example, of say if you've got a client and they're not familiar with a particular exercise or a particular machine or how to use it, how do you solve that by being an online coach?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's very, very simple. They send me videos or we do a video run through. And
Ah, okay.
when you understand how humans move, and I say
Yeah.
humans, and it was a lot of what I learned in my master's degree,
Mm,
you understand that movement patterns are the same across whether you're an athlete or whether
mm,
you're just a 80-year-old Doris going to the gym to try and build some strength for longevity of life. When you understand all movements are the same, you then understand how to regress movements and progress movements to make it either easier for someone or increase the difficulty. Now, when you're coaching face to face, if you're working with an athlete, it's helpful to have a coach there because you want to push them to the absolute 100% of their max. When you've got a person that you're working with, once that person is relatively efficient at that movement, majority of people can self-regulate intensity very well once they learn how to do so, and they don't need somebody stood there counting their reps. That's not the same for everybody. Some people do need that extra support, but that's part of my screening process of, if I'm working with somebody, can I be confident that this person has the ability over time to progress and learn what they need to? And truthfully, if at any point some of my clients don't feel comfortable with exercises and just nothing is working, I do live days anyway, where people come into the gym and we do like a bit of it's almost like a refresher course of movement.
Okay. Nice. So with some of the clients that you get, is it more kind of lifestyle changes and longevity, or is it people who want an 8-week crash course to get them into shape for holiday, or is it?
That's a great question.
Is it all?
Great question. So I don't work with anybody for less than 6 months.
Yeah.
And the reason I don't do that is because I don't believe anybody can change their life in less than 6 months in terms of building habits. The people that I work with are people who want to be the best that they can be. They typically fall into the ranges of business owners. I work with a lot of business owners. As a business owner myself, I tend to find we're like-minded and we enjoy conversation. Dentists, doctors, lawyers, people who have excelled in their profession, but at the cost of their health usually.
So it is more about the lifestyle change that you're trying to address, right?
100%.
Like I said, optimal health. Yeah.
Optimal health, and it's optimal health for what they value most in life, which is very important. It's not for what I value, it's for what they actually value, because that's really what everybody's looking for. But
how they can excel in what they value in life.
Exactly. But most people see a program and they think they want abs, but they don't want abs. They've just been fed the idea that they want abs. So it's really working out, number one, what's your value and what are we doing this for? And then I categorize things into 3 areas. It's physical health, so it's optimal physical health, understanding with the time you have available, what do we have time to put in that is optimal by the science?
Yeah.
It is then optimal nutrition, and that's not chicken, fish and a rice cake. That is definitely not fit like anything like that. Yeah. It is how do we just continuously be better than you were yesterday or last week, and how do we constantly move you towards better health? Because majority of people do these crash diets, the keto diet, whatever it is, and the question I ask people is, you want a result from this? Do you want the result to last? Yes. If you want the result to last, can you see yourself continuing to do what you're doing now in a year's time? No. Do you think it's going to work then for the long term?
Yeah.
No. So it's like, well, how do we build this into your life so you enjoy it? We get the results in the short term and understand the science behind what we're doing, but long term it has sustainability. And then the third bit is a lot around mindset, and truthfully that's the thing that I had the biggest realisation on when I finished my masters, because I was working with a lot of elite athletes. I worked with elite athletes for 2 years, both in the boxing and also in different sports. And the realisation I had was, well, why can I give somebody an optimal program, optimal by nutrition, physical health, strength and conditioning, like absolutely everything. Like it couldn't be better by the science and my knowledge over how many years coaching. Why can someone get a phenomenal result and someone else not really do it? And truthfully, it was always down to mindset. So that's a lot of the coaching that I do now as well. It's around, well, once we've got the plan, what limiting beliefs, what barriers are you setting yourself that is causing you not to follow through with the plan?
Okay, so talking about that kind of sustainability, longevity, and a lifestyle change, then obviously a lot of that sometimes has to come with balance, right? Which some people believe in, some people don't. I myself, my diet is, I like to keep it reasonably good, kind of Monday to Friday. On the weekend, I like to relax a little bit. I may even enjoy a drink every now and again. I like going for a mixed grill, pizza, whatever. I like to kind of chill out as well. I think that allows me to be kind of reasonably kind of healthy. I think you may be somewhere similar, but yeah, tell us a bit about yourself in terms of how do you keep yourself fit? What do you do in terms of, and what's your goals health? What is it, longevity now? Is it, you're not 30 yet, are you?
No,
So
I'm
yeah,
26.
you got plenty of time, man.
Yeah, really great question. So in terms of, I struggled a
Yeah.
lot after I finished boxing to find something that I actually enjoyed.
Yeah.
I was always a lot smaller when I was boxing, because making weight, as everybody knows, it's difficult. You have to strip yourself down. You have to be as lean as you possibly can to be the biggest at the weight.
Yeah.
And because of that, I was always on the smaller side. Now, after I finished boxing, I went and did weightlifting because I thought, I might
Exactly
enjoy
what I
this.
did,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
what
yeah.
I think. I think it's what a lot of people do, and I think it boils down to, if we get into the psychological side, a lot of boxing comes down to significance, wanting to stand out, wanting to be noticed.
Yeah.
So it makes natural sense that when you finish boxing, you haven't got that fighting anymore. Well, let's
Yeah, that's
transition it.
interesting.
Let's
I like that.
transition it to weightlifting so I can be significant there.
Yes.
And again, it comes down to not fully understanding what you value most and really picking something that aligns with that. Now, what I do now, and I just did weightlifting for a few years, got to a point where I got sick of it. When you're a coach and you start missing sessions, you know you need to change something.
Yeah.
Because you physically can't help coach someone else if you're missing sessions yourself.
Yeah.
And it was through boredom more than anything else. Boredom and working ridiculous
Yeah,
hours
yeah,
with
yeah.
the business. Since I had a massive changeover, so I've now changed. I've gone back to doing a little bit of boxing. I like to keep fit through boxing, and I find that really enjoyable when I'm not getting punched in the head.
Yeah,
Bags
yeah,
don't
yeah.
punch bags, so I look okay
Yeah.
on the bag, but yeah, bags don't.
Would you go back into sparring? Or
Not
you
a
done-
chance. Yeah, not
So
a
many
chance.
people say that to me. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, why don't you have a quick spar? I'm like,
Nah.
when you're done with it, you're done with it,
Yeah.
and
That was
there's
a
no
big
need, right?
100%. That was a
Yeah.
big thing for me. I actually when I
Do you ever get a little itch though, where you get tempted? You must
when
do
I see
at
this
times.
YouTube boxing where they're making like millions, like maybe, but like
Yeah.
truthfully, I don't think I ever would. Even if a YouTube fighter come along and call me out for whatever reason,
Yeah.
I wouldn't. But just because I think, as I said, you have to be all in, you have to be 100% there, and it's something that it comes down more so to, it just doesn't align with my values anymore. My values have changed a lot over the years.
It's good that you've got clear direction. I can tell straight away, like, you know what path you want to take. You
Yeah.
know that you're done with the boxing. You don't need to mess around with that anymore, which is good, right? I think it's important for everybody to be clear about what route they want to take in life.
100%. I think it was a question I asked myself a lot when I was coaching people, that how can I coach somebody if I'm scattered, if I don't understand? So it's coaching's great because it's twofold. You get to help somebody achieve their goals, but simultaneously you're also working on yourself, because to be the person that helps guide someone else, you have to come from a place of a full understanding. And yeah, it's getting clear. It's just understanding what I think the best question a lot of people can ask themselves, which they don't, is like, what is my purpose? Going a bit deep
What's my
here.
purpose?
What is why am I here? What is my purpose in life? And the only way you're gonna work that out is reading different perspectives.
By doing things right, it's by being proactive, and I think I went through that, and I think for guys that's a big thing, is trying to discover what your purpose is. And sometimes you think it's just gonna drop out of thin air and you'll find your purpose, but it really doesn't. You have to try things, do things, and slowly it may even be something you suck at the start, but you may slowly begin to build an interest and then excel in it, right? And
100%. And for anybody listening, I think the most logical thing I've come across, it was actually out of a book called A New Earth by a guy called Eckhart Tolle. And it's quite funny me saying this as a guy who did a master's in science and that. He's a little bit more on the spiritual side, but it was, as I said, I'm always open to perspectives.
Yeah,
Like, nothing's right or wrong. There's just closer to the truth and further from the truth. And the only way you work out the truth is if you get multiple perspectives.
yeah,
And his whole thing is that you have two purposes in life, like two main things. The first is to be completely present with whatever you're doing. Because physically, if you're not completely present, it doesn't matter what you do, you're not going to have quality in action. And then the second thing is to help other people do exactly the same, help other people become present and conscious of what they want. And since listening to that, a lot of things have clicked into place for me. And it's almost like coaching is pointless if I'm not completely present with it and I'm not completely conscious as a person.
all in, so to speak, as you said, right?
Exactly. And it's all in from a place of complete consciousness, that you're not scattered, you're not constantly trying to do 1,000,001 things, you're not trying to impress other people, you're present with whatever's going on right in front of your face.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is helping other people do the same, because that's what I boil down to what I'm actually helping people do: physical health, nutrition, and mindset. When you boil it down, people just want to get closer to their experience of life with what they value.
Yeah.
They do so many other different things. They let their health run away, and then health becomes a limitation in them experiencing life fully.
Yeah.
So it's me. Actually, what I'm really helping people do by optimize their physical health, optimize their nutrition, and also optimize their mindset around health is just get closer to their experience of life. And when I got clear on that, as I said, a lot of things clicked into place for me.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, right? Like the spiritual side of it, as you said. But like you said, it's good to have an open perspective on things and how certain things can go hand in hand, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't class myself as a spiritual
Yeah,
woo-woo
I probably
person.
wouldn't say I am either. But there are often interesting viewpoints, right?
when things, and so for me, I read pretty much most stuff from Stoic and Stoicism all the way to neuroscience, because I've got a bit more of that background from the science, so I understand things, and then to the spiritual side. And what you tend to hear is that there's a truth, and there's a common thing or common trend and pattern of what people are saying. And this is what I found so interesting. And the book that I mentioned, A New Earth, he distills a lot of religious teachings as well. And when you constantly hear that there's a truth and there's a pattern to what people are saying, when you think, it doesn't matter what it's packaged up as, if there's a truth there, maybe it's worth listening to. And whether you identify with a particular religion, whether you identify with being a scientist or whatever,
it's a version of the truth.
Exactly,
would you say?
exactly.
It's a perspective of a certain truth.
And and that's what so I'm always looking, how can we get closer to the truth, and what is that truth? And first, if you start looking at things at first principles, which is distilling complexity down into its most basic format, you then get closer to the truth, because you start understanding the individual components that make it up. And you can only understand that when you get multiple perspectives.
Yeah. So obviously we've spoke about finding your purpose and the importance of that. Have you noticed anything when you're coaching male clients more so than female, where they're struggling with the mindset side of things, where they may be working but they may not be present, or they may be struggling to find a purpose? Because I know you more so focus on the physical aspect of things, right?
Yeah.
But is there a mental aspect to the coaching that you do? And is there any kind of common themes that you've seen with the males that you've coached, or even the females?
I actually think it's pretty split with how I coach now. So with nutrition, physical health, and mindset, I'd say it's like 33.333% of everything now.
Okay.
So how I coach, and the mindset has come from my own understanding. And as I said, we studied psychology during my degree as well. So I've got so many different perspectives on it, from practical perspective to the science as well. That a lot of it is mindset. And your question around, is there a particular trend? I think an interesting thing that I heard, which is a generalization, is that men tend to lean towards significance. So they tend to derive their sense of self from things that they do that people recognize them for.
Wanting to be noticed, would you say? I think that's a big thing for men, is wanting to be noticed.
100%. And I mean, you can look at the science in it, and I mean, you can probably take it all the way back to primal, that if there'll be something in it where being part of a tribe and being noticed in the tribe and being part of that is why potentially that occurs. But definitely in modern day society, the way social media is geared up, it's become more prominent in notice for what. And it's noticed for, is it likes on social media, followers on social media, for money. I think a lot of it comes down to money and being noticed for money. And what a lot of people do, and this isn't just the people that I coach or have coached, but I think a lot of people get magnetized by the money. They work ridiculously hard for the money to impress people.
Only lasts for so long, doesn't it?
It's fleeting. It's like gone. And truthfully, people don't care anyway. Like, they don't actually really they don't care how much money you make. And if they do, like, do you really want, if somebody only defines your value by how much money you've got in the bank, like, do you really want to
I think
close to that person?
Yeah, it's true. So I think that's where you'd probably start self-reflecting and knowing that you're not doing things for the right reasons, right? You're not doing things for whatever your purpose may be, which is why it'll only kind of last for so long, which is why this is something that I spoke about in my last podcast with Melissa, who's a a sports and performance psychologist around the importance of having core values and principles for yourself as a person, right? 'Cause I think that in itself gives you a bit of direction as to what type of person you want to be, what maybe career path you want to take. But I think that's quite important, right?
100%. And I think money, it's things like money, it has relative importance because you need to live. And obviously, there's nothing wrong with having a lot of money. It's neither good nor bad.
Yeah,
Just depends what you do with it.
yeah.
But at the
If you're
same
doing something you love, it all.
yeah, and that was a thing. Again, talking about life purpose, I kind of sat there after finishing my masters, thinking like you can make money in a lot of different ways. I even tried trading for a little bit, just for a bit more context. I dabble with that because I was like, oh, there's so many different ways you can make money.
In some ways, you've got to, right? Because you're trying to find what you love as well. So
definitely, I thought, is it for me? Is it something away from health and fitness? Like I was trying these different things, and my conclusion that I came to was that you can make a lot of money doing a lot of different things, especially these days. If you can make a lot of money benefiting people's lives and just being in that kind of state of happiness with it, like it's a win all round, because the money that you're making is exchanged for high quality value of improving someone's life. And for me personally now, I can't see myself doing anything else because of how fulfilling that is. And there's definitely nothing wrong with making a lot of money from doing that because you're providing the value. If you're providing the value, you deserve. That's the currency we exchange. So there's nothing wrong with that.
Okay, no, good stuff. Let's talk about information overload.
Yeah.
Which, something for someone like myself, I'd like to think I reasonably know my stuff when it comes to health and fitness. Obviously nowhere near to the level that you do, but enough to keep myself in reasonable shape. But there's so many times that I've looked online, or because I'm often trying to find ways to improve my own training, right? Even somebody like me gets overwhelmed and confused with the amount of information that's out there, the contradictory information. Like you've heard, like the people like Eddie Abbew, and then the people that are vilifying him, and then you're like, oh, is he right? Is he wrong about this? What is the best way to spot somebody talking shit online about health and fitness? What's the first way to spot that?
So I'm going to go a couple of different angles on this. First off, labeling things good or bad, right or wrong. It's a spectrum. It's not on or off. It's not good or bad. It's not right or wrong. It's how right or how wrong is something. And it kind of slides along that. The way I filter, and I tell all my clients to filter this as well, because I still have my clients coming into me saying, George, is this the new thing? Like, should we be doing this? And I'm like, no, if we should be doing that, we would be doing that. But the way it's an evidence-based approach. So you can tell somebody is talking shit if they're not using those three key things. So are they referencing to science? Are they referencing to specific data from actual humans? And are they referencing expert knowledge through accreditation? The way we really assess expert knowledge is accreditation. Is that always right? Possibly not. I mean, you can also take into account someone's experience of getting a result.
Is there a trial and error approach? Whereas, have you ever tried certain methods on yourself to see if it works or doesn't work? That's probably the best way to know whether. I know in some instances you have to be careful if you've got a medical condition or whatever, but in some ways that's often the best way to learn, right? Is to trial and error on yourself.
100%. 100% trial and error. But if you're going to try something, it's having an understanding of how does this method stack up when I look at it objectively from the perspective of science, so scientific data on that, actual person data, which is usually included in the science, but some organisations will have large pools of data that just haven't been put into a scientific study, and then an expert who's directing it and an expert who has the knowledge on it to give me multiple perspectives to make sure I keep as close to the truth as possible. But before you do any of that, when you're looking for information online of what you want to do, it is actually getting really clear on what do I value most in life and what am I trying to improve in my health and wellness to get me closer to that, because then that will inform the...
It's true. I think it does go back to what you were saying before, right? The different perspectives and the different truths. And because I think the people who are critiquing each other's information, they're all coming at it from different lenses. They've all got their own agenda as to what they're actually trying to get out of that particular topic, right? And who and what type of client is going to suit. So in some ways, they're both wrong or they're both right, in so to speak, right? So it's not really as clear cut as you said, as there's one definitive answer.
There can't be, because
Yeah.
so many different people are so different, and that's one of the ways I assess if someone is talking shit or not. Are they talking in definite terms, like this is 100% right, or this is
I've got the
100%?
solution. I've got the solution to getting a six pack in.
That's my
in 30
shortcut way.
days.
That is literally my shortcut way to think. I'm gonna listen, but I'm probably not gonna 100% believe, because it was one of the main things I learned in my master's degree was critical thinking. So the ability to take an idea or concept and see it from multiple perspectives, and that's what people have a very difficult time doing, is having the idea that two things can both be right at the same time. One doesn't have to be wrong for the other to be right, and that's a very difficult concept to understand. And then screening that, are they using that evidence-based approach? And that's my principle for dealing with it, and that's my principle for coaching, and that's why I'm always confident, or go all the way back to confidence, that because I'm using those three key things there, the science, I'm using data to inform decision making, and then I'm also using my expert knowledge from, it's been like 8+ years now, coming up to 9 years in next January that I've been coaching, and even longer than that, just being a boxer myself. I'm always confident that I'm going to give somebody the best solution. And I'm always open to being challenged as well. If somebody says to me, well, have you considered this? I'm more than happy to say, oh, I might not be 100% right. Let's try that, and try. It then comes down to let's trial and error.
That's mindset to have, right?
Yeah, because if you close,
especially as a coach, you're always learning. It doesn't mean that that's it. I've got all my knowledge now. My finished article.
I literally thought, and it's hilarious you say that, because I wouldn't have spoke like this after I finished my masters. I thought I finished my master's degree.
That's it.
University, I'm done. I'm not doing a PhD. Like I'm as high as I'm gonna get. And the funny thing came for me was, number one, around the mindset, but then the second thing around business, because I was like, I'm going to go set up a business. People will line up for me. I've got a master's degree. I'm definitely better than all these personal trainers who are making tons of money.
It's good to have that confidence as well in yourself, right? But
but then it was a very quick awakening where I was like, no, I need to go and now learn about business, marketing, selling, but at the same time, not lose sight of my core values.
That's all right, mate. You know what? Let's cut there, because we're going to have a costume change, all right? Yeah. So obviously we've spoke about obviously the overload of information online, right? And obviously you get a lot of coaches critiquing each other's methods and the things that they preach. A typical one, and I always ask a few people on this, 'cause I'm just interested. Somebody like Eddie Abbew, who'll say calorie counting is something that you shouldn't do. It's all a fad. It should be about eating real whole foods and whatnot. What's your thoughts on that? Is there an overemphasis on calorie counting, do you think?
Again, it comes down to calorie counting is neither good nor bad. It depends how you use it. Calorie counting for some people can be bad, who become obsessive about it, and it leads to an eating disorder. In that case, it's not very useful at all, and that needs a specialist to help them. In my experience, so I've been an amateur boxer. I calorie counted for years to make weight. I've coached people for years using calorie counting, and they've lost a lot of weight and became very healthy. And I'll make sure I keep it based in the science, because if we distill it down again to first principles, so its most fundamental component, energy into the body, energy out of the body. If you are taking more energy out of the body than you're consuming in, you're losing weight. An easy way to measure that is to count calories, and that's just a very easy way to do it. Because it's an easy method to do, it's very accessible to people. I think where people go wrong is that they use calorie counting but don't have a method for transitioning away from calorie counting. So they don't have the whole process. They think, right, I'm going to calorie count, I'm going to smash myself for 8 weeks, I'm going to lose all this weight.
How do you transition out of it but keep the results and keep the consistency?
Exactly. How do you then create a lifestyle around your maintenance weight? Because I always say to people, like, if you've calorie counted in a deficit, maintaining is easy, because you then learn how to do it. You're not really hungry at all. And that's one of the core parts of my coaching, is that I help people calorie count. We have a coaching process around that, but then we have a coaching process around moving away from calorie counting.
Okay. So one of the things that, and again, I'm referring to Eddie Abbew again because I'm quite interested. He promotes high protein, whole foods, and kind of no carbs and whatnot, where he kind of finds it unnecessary. Obviously, it's very kind of not sustainable, right, for the long term. But let's take sustainability out the window because you have people who have a lot of kind of health conditions and things, right? Let's say, is it a choice over kind of health, longevity, and kind of sustainability? Because let's say if you were really sick, for example, or you had a medical condition, but the things that he was saying were right in terms of improving your overall health. And let's say, for example, if you had diabetes or whatever it may be, and what he's preaching kind of improves that, is that something that you should consider doing? Is it realistic, the things that he says?
Yeah, really great question, mate. And it always comes down to that answer of it depends. I think it's wrong to portray information that's right for everybody, but actually only right for maybe a collective group of people. So if it's only right for some people, but you're portraying that to everybody and he's got a massive following, I think that's unfair because some people will follow that advice and get poor results from that.
Yeah.
And the whole point you mentioned about no carbs, for some people,
I don't know if it is no carbs that he says, but I think primarily it's
lower carbs.
Yeah,
but I mean, like if you're talking about, if we're going to like the logical extreme, when working with an elite athlete, you understand that majority of high intensity exercise and elite performance is run off carbs. So when people say to me they're cutting out carbs, I'm always a little bit like, that's definitely going to take you probably further away from optimal performance. Albeit for some people it might be the solution, but for majority, I always question that.
The one thing I did find is, and again, I like to trial and error a lot of stuff myself, so I stuck to kind of the meats and the high protein, and I used to have a lot of carbs, say, for example, during lunchtime, whether it be like bread or potato or something else. And what I always used to find is that I used to always have a midday crash or a midday lull, and then by cutting out my carbs during the middle of the day and just sticking to primarily like meats and maybe dairy, I found that midday lull had kind of gone, and I felt really sharp.
Yeah.
But again, is that something which wouldn't quite apply to the physical aspect when it gets to sports and being required to perform to a high level? Do you think is that where the carbs are then needed?
It depends. So if you're an elite athlete, we used to use something called carbohydrate periodization. So the way carbs work, and there's a fantastic scale for this, which is the glycemic index, which roughly categorizes different carbohydrate foods into how quickly it releases in your bloodstream. Okay. So if it's a high GI food, like a Haribo, it's going to spike your bloodstream and spike right down and crash, which is possibly part of the contribution to that midday lull. And then
say obviously we've both boxed, would you recommend having some Haribos right before you get in the ring?
100%. So when you are periodizing carbohydrates for an athlete, we and this is where understanding optimal performance for athletes really helps you give advice for everybody else. Okay. Because with an athlete, you will work out how many grams of carbohydrates they need for how many hours before, because we know how quick that's going to release in their bloodstream and how many kind of intervals that they need to intake them to optimize performance when they go in. Yeah. Again, that's different for every athlete because every athlete slightly will respond differently, which is where you understand you have to try and test things.
So if you're, for example, say a footballer, you'd want slow releasing carbs when you, I assume.
Yeah, so more, and that's why you hear of a lot of the footballers eating pasta for breakfast before they go to training in the morning. Yeah. So and that's the thing that everybody kept saying in my masters, which is where I got that real understanding that perspective is what matters the most, and it always depends. It's just when people like Eddie are screaming saying that is wrong and it's forcing people down one way of doing things, which is making him probably a lot of money. That's what I massively disagree with. It's like, well, you're just fulfilling your own, and you're doing stuff to stand out on social media instead of really help people, because this conversation, having an understanding, well, it needs to be applied to you, it needs to be adapted, is more helpful.
Do you think that's what he's doing? Do you think he's choosing clicks and likes and views over trying to educate people, or do you think that's just genuinely what he believes?
He might believe his own disillusion,
Yeah.
but honestly, yeah, I think majority of them choose clicks and likes because for him, if you think of his positive
Yeah.
reinforcement loop,
Yeah.
the more I'm outrageous, the more likes I get, the more money I make.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to just be more outrageous, and it's not. Again, it's not his fault to an extent because he's just being almost programmed to do that. But it definitely is his responsibility because my big issue with people like that is that they send people down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
People then go and try that. It doesn't work. They listen to people like him, and then it's my fault.
Yeah.
Health and fitness isn't for me. I'm just going to do whatever I want, and that leads to poor health for them. Which then, and people don't quite understand the negative ripples that what poor health for one person and obesity being an epidemic, it spreads. It actually spreads through multiple factors, but if we're even speaking about the next generation of people, if you've got poor health as an adult and that child is seeing your behaviours, it's reinforcing that. And I know that's kind of going way off on a tangent just from misinformation, but that is what it realistically does lead to. It leads to quite a large negative effect.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. And also, I think, to be fair, there are a few people, more than a few, that have called him out on a lot of what he's said so far. Is it something that you've ever considered doing with certain coaches and obviously there's a lot of information out there now because it's become a bit of a trend that coaches and trainers are doing now on social media where they'll take a snippet and they'll obviously have their comments and views over it and they'll critique it. Is that something?
It's probably something I'm going to consider doing after this podcast. It's something true.
Is this just a trend amongst coaches that is happening now about critiquing each other's things on social media?
I think so, yeah. But truthfully, so with my social medias, I just use my social media for business.
Yeah.
So I try not to follow too many like outrageous, crazy coaches. But maybe like it. Now you're actually saying this is kind of clicking in my head. Maybe it would be useful to follow some of these people and call them out on it because that would be helpful. I maybe don't need to attack them and say they're completely wrong because clearly to get that much following, it's right for some people. But for giving this kind of a perspective of no, for some people this isn't going to work. It's not your fault if it doesn't work. You just need to try different things that are more suited and that actually fit into your lifestyle is probably far better advice.
Yeah, no, that's
Fortunately, people don't click that though.
They don't, mate.
Well, we'll find out. We'll find out actually.
we will, yeah, no, 100%. One thing that I do want to fit in and talk about on this podcast, so we'll talk about it now, and we spoke a little bit off camera about this as well, was obesity within the UK at the moment, and how big of a problem is it, if a problem at all, and what have you seen of kind of obesity so far and the problems?
Yeah, it's a massive problem. It costs the NHS billions of pounds a year in things that diseases that are preventable. So it's a massive problem. It's something that obviously you can mitigate the risks of and reduce it because it is simply losing fat.
Why is it so common in this country? What's the root cause, do you think?
So the World Health Organization declared obesity as an epidemic, so similar to the coronavirus, years and years ago. I think it was in the 90s, but I definitely would want to be fact-checked on that. And the reason they did that was because it was almost spreading, and there's so many factors that go into causing obesity, such as socio-economic, mindset, people, depending on where you live, is a massive factor. There's things that contribute to it, and it almost spreads because it's a behavior and humans copy other humans. And if it's easier to go and buy McDonald's than it is to buy and cook healthy food, it becomes almost we're geared to do that.
That's a huge thing, right? Is convenience, I think. I think that plays a massive part. Like you've seen Deliveroo and or the quickest way to get in shape, which is what a lot of people are looking for with personal trainers and coaches. But convenience, I think, is a big thing, right?
100%, and that's what's leading to a lot of obesity because everything is so convenient. You don't even have to go out of your front door to order food. You don't have to go anywhere.
Working from home now as well, you're moving less.
So we're becoming more intelligent, but physically we're de-evolving. If you were kind of put it on broad terms.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and that's what's happening. And then the real solution for that is more intelligent ways of training. Because if you think about that, well, we want convenience. We probably don't have as much time because we fill it with so many convenience things like watching Netflix and all that kind of stuff. Well, we just need to be more intelligent about the way we exercise, the way we eat, and how we kind of navigate this new world of everything being so easy for us.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's it's interesting. Yeah, because it's the first thing I've kind of picked up on when it comes to people struggling to get in shape or people who are out of shape is that they're always looking for, like you said, convenience and what's the easiest way to do something without having to really put in kind of any kind of effort, right? But it's just strange how the world is evolving now slowly over time, where that has become acceptable, and the powers that are out there, they are shoving convenience in your face. So it's you're having to, in some ways, like you said, untrain people out of that mindset. I think it's a mindset thing, right?
Yeah, 100%. It's just a feedback loop of what's easiest, what's going to keep me entertained, and that's what's leading to a bigger lack of fulfillment, because people are getting further away from optimal health. People are getting further away from what they value in life, and I think, and I'll touch on this, I think bodybuilding has a lot to do, and social media has a lot to do with how people view health and fitness. A lot of people view health and fitness as looking good. I need to train 8 weeks, 12 weeks to get a six pack, to be as lean as possible, to look good for other people. But when you actually, and that's why a lot of people give up, because when you boil it down, they don't care about it enough. I always say that to people, if they'll give me reasons as to why they want to get fit and healthy, and if they don't use those reasons and get fit and healthy, I'll say they weren't clearly good enough reasons. And it's really doing a bit of a deeper dive to what I said earlier of why is health and why is improving your health so important to what you value actually most in life? Because when you find that, when you find what's actually going to give you happiness in life and what's going to move you away from pain, you're going to be so much more likely to commit to becoming healthy, as opposed to just following trends, as opposed to just going down the bodybuilding route of just wanting to look good.
Yeah.
Because if it was good enough, you'd have already done it. So it's not.
If we had time, I would have loved to have talk a little bit about bodybuilding, because I think that's a podcast session on its own, right? But we'll have to save that one for perhaps another episode.
Yeah.
But I also want to finally touch on alcohol consumption as well. And is it possible to lead a generally kind of healthy lifestyle whilst obviously everything in moderation, right? But being able to have that occasional kind of few drinks, I say a few drinks, but because even myself, when it comes to alcohol consumption, I went to university drinking 3 times a week. Even post university, still probably I was consuming more than I should have been somehow. I don't know how, but managed to stay in reasonable shape. Probably because I was out working the crap I was putting into my body. But I feel like even for myself, it's quite a journey with alcohol. As I get older, eventually it's something that I'd like to completely kind of move away from, right? Because I can feel it knocking years off my life in terms of the terrible sleep it gives me, and obviously the crash that you have afterwards. But what's your thoughts on it?
I have quite controversial opinion on alcohol now. I definitely used to drink a lot more. It's quite funny. When I was an elite athlete boxing, off season I used to drink tons, typical binge drinking at that age, eat way worse foods than I do now. And now I'm getting to a point where I'd class myself as someone who hardly drinks. And like yourself, I constantly go through phases of just not drinking at all. I've got to a point now where someone could put a drink in front of me and I could happily drink it, or I could happily walk away from it. Either way, it doesn't bother me. And that comes down to, for me, a few things. So if you look at self-mastery or true self-mastery is being completely internally driven, like having your internal compass, whereas majority of people are just slaves to the things outside. They're impulses, and drinking isn't really something that they enjoy. It's an impulse. And go back to what we were saying about convenience. Alcohol just provides them convenience with confidence. It just allows them to be more confident.
That's a good point.
So rather than doing the actual work that they need to do to overcome their self-limiting factors, they just turn to alcohol. Because if you
quick fix, right?
And if you actually look at alcohol logically, boil it down logically, what positive effects does it have in your life? I can't, other than the convenience of confidence, but really, if you do the inner work, you develop yourself and get past your own limitations, you'll have confidence anyway. So if you remove that,
convenience, isn't it? It's that
I'd
probably that short term little high that you get
Yeah,
from it before you do eventually start crashing. And yes, I feel like a form of escapism, isn't it, in some way, and convenience, like you said as well.
And majority of people are just escaping from their overactivity in their mind. And going
Yeah.
back to what I said about presence, and there's a lot of science around meditation and being able to not clear your mind, but just being conscious of your own thoughts and not getting involved with them. Most people just use alcohol as convenience to escape that, or convenience for confidence. When you take those two things away, alcohol just becomes a thing that gives you a terrible headache and feeling terrible the next day. It is a depressant, so it causes lower moods. It causes you to behave in ways with being aggressive that you never would do. And it's just like, what?
Your judgment completely changes, right? Especially on the emotional side of things as well. And yeah, like I even noticed myself. Yeah, I think it's the first time as I've got older now, you really start to kind of self-reflect.
Yeah.
Why are you drinking it? Why do you do this when you drink? What is it that you're trying to achieve? And you never know. Not saying I'm going to go teetotal or anything, but it does put a lot of things into perspective when you start thinking about why you do it and your actions when you drink, when you don't drink. So no, it's an interesting one.
I think most people would remove it as well if they could, but they're so socially conditioned and conditioned by marketing. If you actually become really aware when you're watching YouTube, watching anything, drinks pop up. It's such a big industry. It makes people so much money. You watch people in TV shows, they're constantly drinking. People in adverts, they're constantly drinking, and it's portrayed in a way where it's a luxury.
I think now, obviously, in all social settings, even work settings, right? If there's somebody who's not drinking, not that you'd be forcibly made to drink, but in some ways you're the odd one out. And, oh, how come? Like, what's wrong? What's wrong? How come you not? You know what I mean? You're not kind of. It shouldn't be like that, really. That it should be acceptable to not want to drink. So it's just strange that. What society has kind of done when it comes to alcohol, right?
And you could even reframe it to that person isn't drinking because they don't need the convenience of confidence and a peace of mind.
Yeah.
If you reframe it that way, and it kind of makes sense, and they don't want the negative effects of alcohol, because if you ask people, well, why are you drinking? I just want to feel good. Well, if you feel good anyway, you don't need it.
Yeah.
And I need to be a bit more confident. Well, if you've got confidence, you don't need it. So it's like, and again, rather than doing the convenient route, do the things that are going to cause it to last, because everybody knows it quickly it's convenient, but it's very, very short lived.
Yeah.
And it goes away very quickly. And if anything, it flips to the other side where it probably knocks your confidence because of how you are, how you feel the next day. It creates lower mood, so it probably does the opposite in net total.
No, definitely. No, I think that pretty much makes sense, to be honest. George, I think we're at the end of our podcast. I think we could have gone on for another half an hour, to be honest, because I've got plenty more questions. But you never know, maybe there's an episode 2 coming, right? But yeah, thank you for watching, guys. If you do want to kind of hear a little bit more about George and the work that he does, give him a follow on social media. What's your handle on Instagram?
Instagram, it's George Vernon with an underscore at the end. LinkedIn is just George Vernon. You can search me. I've got a page on there as well. And then Facebook, George Vernon too.
Good stuff. So yeah, be sure to give them a follow, guys. Also, shout out to our partners of the podcast, Gym Pro Apparel. Check out their website as well, guys. Got constant discounts going on. Great gym clothing as well that I wear myself. I'm wearing right now. Blowing up on the health and fitness scene. So yeah, be sure to check them out. And thank you for watching. Cheers, George.
Thank you very much, mate.
Oh, nice one.